if you have a weird clinical case or a weird business thing come up and you're like, man, I don't know what to do, you can join the community, ask a question, or look through what other people are asking just to kind of see like, oh man, I came across that problem a couple weeks ago. If I go through it again, I know what I need to do now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raving Patients podcast. As you know, I'm your host, Dr. Len Tao. I first want to go ahead and thank our sponsors, both Dental Intelligence and the doc sites, for their support. I'm able to do this as often as I do because of their support, so please check them out. You'll hear commercials throughout the episode with their information. I also want to remind everybody who's listening and watching that I'm hosting an event in South Florida, September 29th and 30th. It's called Supercharge Your Dental Practice. 18 speakers, 14 hours of CE focused on the business and marketing side of your practice. If you want more information, you can check out superchargeyourdentalpractice.com, and you can use the code RAVING, RAVING, to save $100 on your registration. I hope to see you there. So today's episode is called How to Navigate the World of Practice Management. My guest is Addison Killeen, who is a dentist in Nebraska, who also owns a Capital Dental. We're going to be talking about his new book called The Dental Front Office Manual, which I have a copy of right here, as well as all of his other books as well. So please welcome to the Raving Patients podcast, Addison Killeen. Addison, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Len.
To me, you have to be living under a rock, really, not to know who you are or know something about you. But let me read your bio. We'll go through this fairly quickly. He is a dentist and entrepreneur in Lincoln, Nebraska. He received his bachelor's in psychology from St. Louis University, and he works as a special projects manager for Telesis in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's a business conglomerate that has entities that include a whole slew of other businesses. During his time, he helped form corporations and do the financial management to ensure that each business cost category had maximum efficiency. He then attended the University of Nebraska College of Dentistry to earn his doctorate in dental surgery. After dental school, he was a founder of Williamsburg Dental, a DSO in Lincoln, Nebraska, with 5 offices. He sold and exited that business in 2018 to focus on his new venture, the Dental Success Network, also known as DSN, a close-knit community of high-achieving dentists and industry experts that includes a collection of resources to help dentists become excellent clinicians, run more profitable businesses, and to improve their work-life balance. The team at DSN then created Front Office Academy, a collection of guided resources to help create amazing dental team members from rookie to rock stars with video, homework, and virtual coaching. He also serves as a black belt level coach with the brightest minds in the dentistry at the Dental Success Institute, also known as DSI. DSI was founded by Mark Costas. He exclusively helps other dentists inside the elite practice mastermind at DSI, and he currently practices at Capital Dental, a flagship style office in Lincoln, Nebraska, with 3 doctors that provides comprehensive dentistry in a relaxing environment. So you've got some background. I know that was a little longer than I normally like to read, but you got the goods. I got to read the goods. So Addison, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. Yes, apologize for the long and boring bio, but yeah, my history in restaurants and breweries are a lot more interesting to people than when I say that I'm a dentist. So people are like, oh, you like beer? Like, yes, I do like beer.
But what it did was that it set you up for success in other areas, such as the dental practice, because you understood things that were running a business. Remember, the average dentist is not a good businessman. They're not. And I think you would agree with that. And that's part of the reason why I'm having my event in South Florida focus on the business side and marketing side, because doing the dentistry is easy. It's the business side that makes practicing dentistry hard, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're lucky. In the dental world, we can still make a decent living by screwing up our business super bad. Like, we can run a negative, what I would consider negative profitability, but we're still taking home a really good salary as a dentist. And so if you're a dentist and business owner, you can be taking home 20 or 25% of your total revenues of your practice, and you still think you're doing pretty darn well. Whereas you should be taking home 40, 50, 55% of your revenues. So you could be making twice as much. Now, in the restaurant industry, they don't have that luxury. I helped run the numbers side of a group. We had mid-market American restaurants and a couple other, trials and errors as well. But they're running at, if on a really good month, you're running at 6 or 7% profitability. And on a bad month, you're losing money. Now, we didn't have too many bad months and never really came in a row. But even at, you're talking, you make a mistake and you drop from 7% profitability to 3.5%, you lost 50% of your profit right there. And obviously in a restaurant, it takes tons of staff members. They're usually lower paid, lots of turnover. You got, meat being stolen out of the back kitchen. You just got weather that can affect how well your business does day to day. So it was super interesting trial, and we got to play around with a lot of fun things. We got to have a lot of fun. But in essence, though, I did learn a lot about dentistry or business, and then I was able to parlay that into running a decent dental clinic and growing my group initially.
So, I read in your bio and we discussed prior, you kind of started a DSO in Nebraska, and you decided that wasn't what you wanted, and you ended up selling that. And then you now are open. Now you have a one facility. You did mention that you're expanding it to 13 chairs, you told me. So can you just touch base on, there are going to be people on listening to this that, have one or two and want to get to 6 or 7. And so can you just talk about what made you kind of shift your career in that sense? Why you went, to as many as you did and then came back and now you're doing a single location.
Yeah. So when I started to go from 1 to 2, it's a little hard, but you can still manage it being, the owner and leader of the practice. Once you get to 4, 5, 6, it takes a lot of time, and it was pretty much every day I was going to a different office, trying to hire managers, that believed the core values of the practice we were trying to espouse. You have so many issues that you get spread really thin. And for me, it was more of a lifestyle choice. I had little kids. I had a 3 and a 1-year-old at the time. And, being gone basically 60 to 70 hours a week, every day of the week, working on something, managing 6 different properties and the buildings they were in and all that stuff. It just became a lot. And granted, I was not afraid to hire. We had a great executive team, but at the end of the day, the culture of the company is 100% reliant on its leadership. And if that leadership is absent or like at the other practice or, isn't around, then culture can degrade. And so for me, I was like, this isn't the lifestyle I want. And I wanted an easier life. And so I said, I'm going to take a little break, do something else. And maybe I'll get back into clinical. And so that's what happened is, a year later, my favorite sandwich shop closed down. And it's like, well, maybe this is a sign from God that I should take this lease over from the sandwich shop, which was still very sad. And I said, well, let's put 6 operatories in it and see what we can do. Now, I think, as well as everyone listening to your show, the community perception of your practice and primarily checking reviews and seeing what other people have said is a huge thing. And so we do a pretty good job on that. We focus really highly on the patient experience. Our number one core value is fantastic guest experience. And we don't say patients, we always say guests, because we want to treat people just like as if they were going to Disney. Disney always says guests. And so, for us, fantastic guest experience is number one, whether that's, winning over a patient with a special gift, a bottle of wine, T-shirts, a Yeti, like a cooler, basically making sure that when they leave or, they say, oh, I'm going on vacation. Okay, write a handwritten note to them and wait to mail it 2 weeks until they get back from their vacation and ask them how their vacation was. So any of those little things generate a really positive feelings towards the practice, help get you more reviews. And, for us, we've been lucky in that respect. And so that's why we're growing from 6 operatories now to 13.
Well, it's really interesting because, this podcast is called Raving Patients. It's not about reviews. It started that way, but it's far more than that. But obviously they call me the reviews doctor. I'm all about creating raving patients. And it sounds like that you have that instilled in your brain, in your practice, that you need to make the guests feel like they're the most important people in the world. So you probably have a ton of these raving patients who want to talk about you online and help your practice grow as well.
Yeah, obviously it's my hometown. So it's like, where I live, where my kids go to school. And, that does a lot for a doctor. But having a few raving patients, and, that's not everyone. It's going to be impossible to win over everyone 100% of the time. But if it's a significant amount of your patient population that at least has a more positive, and then you just get that, 10% of your patient population that absolutely loves you, that if one of their friends asks, hey, who should I go to? They say your name. That's pretty huge. It's one interesting thing. I had training a new associate, so I got 4 doctors now. And the newest guy asked, what is the biggest reason for, how do we keep getting so many more reviews than some of our competitors on this side of town? And it's a lot about just caring about people, connecting with them. Finding patients who you would want to actually be your friend. What can you connect with them on? So, it doesn't matter if you like the same sports or if you go to the same vacation spots, or if you have the same, I like those tennis shoes. I actually have a pair of those at home too. Those are cool. Basically something that allows you to connect with that patient so that they become your friend and you become their friend. And if you kind of make the practice centered around things you like, then it's people are attracted to that, or the people that you want to be attracted to that will come to your patient base and join your practice.
I think that's great. And like I said, it's a fascinating kind of shift in your career to going from, hey, I own 7, now you own 1. Obviously, you're doing some other things. So just real briefly, I'm not sure that everybody knows what Dental Success Network and Dental Success Institute are. Can you briefly just talk about that, let people know what it is and how you got started on that side of things?
Dental Success Network, DSN, it's a community where you join and you get buying discounts from different vendors, including softwares, supplies. So a couple of the biggest supply houses and companies in the nation give us affiliate deals where we get all of our members lower prices. That typically saves somebody about $17,000 to $20,000 a year in vendor supply savings. It's the exact same bonder, exact same PVS you'd order from one of your companies that you're ordering now. And it could even be the exact same company. But then once you join our buying group, you save money. The second one is CE, so continuing education. We have a couple hundred hours of both clinical and practice management CE. And then third, you have a community. We have 38 faculty members, experts in the different smaller parts of dentistry, whether it's not just perio, but maybe implant failure, and oral surgery, but maybe IV sedation as well, and regular sedation. We have an anesthesiologist. And so all these different little clinical, even sleep medicine, that's becoming a bigger topic. So we have faculty members there. So all the faculty. So if you have a weird clinical case or a weird business thing come up, and you're like, man, I don't know what to do, you can join the community, ask a question, or look through what other people are asking just to kind of see oh man, I came across that problem a couple weeks ago. If I go through it again, I know what I need to do now.
Got it. And then an offshoot of that is Dental Success Institute. So can you just touch base on that then?
Yeah. And Dental Success Institute is the private coaching arm with Mastermind with Dr. Mark Costas. And so that is 4 meetings a year, private meetings, masterminds with all that private group. And then you get monthly coaching calls and monthly numbers. And so that's kind of the more,
higher level.
If you need more intense coaching, that's a great option. The Dental Success Network is just $199 a month. So it should more than pay for itself, hopefully 10 times over. And it's just a lot easier if you're more of a self-guided type of person.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you for just sharing that because I'm not sure everybody knows what it is. So that was a shout out to what you guys have done there. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about your books. I have 5 of them over there. I have your newest one here called the Dental Front Office Manual here. You called it the orange one. So there's the orange one. Look, I've written 2 books. I have a book, Raving Patients. I wrote in 2020. And then I have a book called 100 Plus Tips to Generating 100 5-Star Reviews in Just 100 Days. that came out a little over a year ago. So I've written some books myself. In your case, you've written, I think 7 total or 8 total now. So can you kind of, talk about how you got into that whole process as well, and a little bit about this book in particular?
Well, yeah, the first book I ever wrote was called By the Numbers. And that's kind of a primer on, okay, as dentists, we have so many things to focus on, what is our material working? What's our process and getting patients in the door and all the other business and clinical things. So By the Numbers was, okay, what are the top 26 metrics you need to watch in your practice? And the premise of the book is if you were an absentee owner and you could only have 26 numbers on a note card sitting on the beach to review your business, you would know in these 26 numbers how your business is doing. And this is all predicated on the belief that Harvard Business Review kind of published in the 90s of running your business on a scorecard. And so I said, okay, I can boil it down to these numbers. And so it goes through each of these numbers and whether, what are good ranges and what do they look like. And so that's, called By the Numbers. It's pretty easy one. The next one though was when I saw, a lot of people didn't have a good operations manual for their practice. And so the operations manual should include, how do you bring patients in? Marketing, new patient acquisition, and then how do you create the patient experience? How should you answer the phones? But then even other things like how does money move through the practice and how should your accounts receivable work? How should some of the more business processes, cash flow statements, all that stuff. So we go through all the different kinds of the practice, and that was the operations manual. After that one, people started asking more questions, and I could kind of start to see, okay, well, what's the next problem that a lot of dentists come up with? And sometimes it was either, okay, I'm going to acquire a practice. What's the best way to do it? Or what's the best way to value it? Come up with a true valuation. How do I manage the change there? Or a startup. I really want to do my own thing. I want to start with a fresh slate. How should I do that? How should I do construction and whatnot as well? I've done many of those, both. Like my current one is a startup from scratch. So each of those I was able to kind of put into writing, okay, all of my best stuff, like let's lay it all out there, and show exactly how it goes and what are the pros and cons of each scenario. So those were my second and third books. The fourth book was, the dental marketing manual. So the marketing, we generate about 200 new patients a month in our practice. We do a lot of marketing, but at the same time, it's also, some things work in some markets, some don't. How can you attribute some things you have done versus others? So it's kind of, trying to show, okay, how should I be tracking my marketing to know ROI, and kind of what's the process for evaluating the marketing? And then after, if you market it well enough, you're going to need associate dentists. So then the fifth book was the associate dentist manual. So that kind of goes from the point of view of an owner who is hiring the next associate for them. And it goes through all the process to choosing the right one, onboarding the right one, and the whole process to keep them successful so that you as the owner are fulfilled and profitable. But at the same time, you're setting your associate up for success in the future. And then the final one, the one you have in your hands, is the dental front office manual. And so that's, the next biggest thing that I thought, a lot of folks were asking is like, well, how do I really get a handle on what is going on in my front office and what's the best systems? And so, I don't have necessarily all the answers. So I have 2 wonderful co-authors, and it's my front office team who said, okay, well, we think, they've been living in my world for the last few years about efficiency, innovation, just making sure we're doing the right stuff at the right time. And some of that's like what tasks are super important to do in a timely manner and what tasks can you do on a 30-day window, just let's do it once a month. Sometimes people are like, well, like I'm trying to do too many things at once. And I said, well, don't do all this stuff if it's not time important. Like answering the phone, yes, they are calling right now. You need to pick it up right now. In terms of sending refund checks, no, wait until a Friday afternoon on the slowest day of the month when the phones aren't ringing. Then you sit down and you do that task because it's just not time important. It's not important to the next new patient experience. Like if it takes 4 weeks for you to get a refund check, that's kind of that's okay. Like most patients don't care. So, just kind of all the systems around, how to answer the phones, how to schedule. Block scheduling is a huge one. I'm a big fan of block scheduling. And then just teaching all those things that a dentist doesn't get taught in school that are really, really detailed around the front office. And it also includes, with all of our manuals that I've written, it also includes tons of like downloadable documents, whether it's spreadsheets, scripts, or, some of the things are even programming, like I'm a big fan of Open Dental. So all of my like Open Dental documents that are downloaded in a, funky format. Once you buy the book, you get access to all that stuff. You can upload that into your version of the software and it works really well.
Is the target audience for all the books doctors, or is the dental front office is geared towards the front office person, or is it because the doctor's the owner, they're the ones that have to kind of implement everything?
It's the front office would be like for the front office people as well as a doctor. And marketing would be the one, if you actually have a marketing manager in your office, that would be, readable and understandable by someone that could be a doctor or could be someone in marketing. Some of the stuff us doctors, we quite honestly shouldn't be in. Like we should not be sending out statements ourselves. We should not be doing some of these things. And unfortunately, I've seen in decades past where like one of the doctors I bought out, I saw a timestamp on a report that he printed off from EagleSoft and it said 2 a.m. Like, what are you doing at 2 a.m.? You should not be doing this. Like, you made really good money. And at the same time, he was so frugal that he didn't want to pay somebody else to do this. And at a certain point, we need to pay other people to do some of these tasks for us.
I agree with you 100%. And, going back to something you said at the very beginning, which you talked about profitability and how a couple of percentage points can change how profitable the practice is. One of the things I talk about case acceptances. As you know, there's only a couple ways to make more money. You either raise your fees, and if you're with insurance companies, it's difficult to raise your fees unless you're, again, fee for service, or, decrease your expenses. That's the really only way to get a practice to make more money. Become more productive or cut your expenses. And cutting expenses this day and age, I think, is very difficult to do as well. So do you have any thought on that?
Yeah. I mean, really, you could raise your prices on the same number of procedures you're doing, or you do more procedures, or you decrease the cost on those procedures. So you kind of nailed it. Decreasing costs, like if you're already in a buying group and you're buying the most economical amount of supplies at the best price, okay, well then you're good. And really, I set my budget for like dental supplies, it should be at 4%, 4 to maybe 4.5. Realistically, 3.5 is pretty doable. I live at about 3.5, and it's pretty good. Lab fees should be about 6%. Now, I pay really expensive lab fees because I love my lab technician. I use a local lab. I pay way more than I should, but I also don't have problems with my crowns. Like I get great work. You could probably cut your lab bills in half from what I pay, and I still keep mine at 6.5%. So between lab and supplies, 10 to 11% would be okay. Now, some of you out there are like milling your own blocks and stuff. And so sometimes you order that as a supply when that should be a lab, but think 10 to 11 for those two cost categories. If you're already doing that, then that's good. The other way to cut costs is looking at your like facility and some of those recurring costs. And quite honestly, it's really tough in some markets. If you're in a big city, New York, San Francisco, San Diego, it's going to be really tough to cut costs and your labor is more expensive. So if you have young dentists listening to the show right now, if you're looking to make more money, move to Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Montana, move to a place that's slightly smaller market where labor might be cheaper, real estate's incredibly cheaper. And sometimes it just means you're moved to the outskirts of a big city. I know some of the most successful folks I know, they're on like the outskirts of Nashville or, an hour away from Atlanta. Well, an hour away from Atlanta, you're still in Atlanta. So it doesn't really make much of a difference. So you still get the access to the best flights and sports venues, whatever, but you're kind of in a small town. And sometimes that can make a huge economic difference. Raising fees, for a lot of us that are in network with, insurances, that's doesn't really move the needle that much. Dropping an insurance or two might not be a bad idea. I sometimes make those decisions, not based on money, but based on how much guff they give my front office when fighting claims. And so if my front office says like, oh man, we really think we should drop them because they're kind of a pain to deal with, my next question is, okay, how many patients are on that plan? And I give you full permission to drop them. Like if it creates your life as difficult, then that creates, more stress for you. And I'd rather keep my folks happy. And so we'll drop them. But I think that's, I think trying to do more like efficiently is also a big thing. And like case acceptance, like getting the highest case acceptance you can, which would be if 85% of patients walked out the door accepting the treatment that you wanted for them, 85 to 90, that would be really high. And I would be super happy with that. Sometimes we achieve that and sometimes we don't. But that 85 would be my target case acceptance. I don't know. What would you say?
When I give case acceptance seminars, I talk about the gold nugget is 85%. Obviously, very few people are really near that. But, one of the things I'm super impressed with, and I'm sure you've heard this before, you know your numbers so well. And it's amazing. And I'm a huge fan of Shark Tank, and I talk about it a lot on my podcast. If you watch Shark Tank, they beat into your brain that you have to know your numbers. And there are so many dentists that I talk to, and I talk to a ton because of Bird Eye and the consulting I do. But there are so many dentists that I ask very simple questions to that they absolutely have no clue what the number is or what number means. And it's very difficult to run a successful practice when someone doesn't know their numbers. The one number they know is they know how many new patients they get. That's an easy number. They know exactly how many new patients they get, but they don't know how many people leave the practice that month. And their practice is retracting because they're letting too many people out the back door. So it's very interesting, how that is. But you obviously rattled off your numbers. You knew 3.5 to 11% total for your labs plus your supplies. I mean, those are numbers that most people have no clue about. So it's very impressive, but that's why you're successful is because you know your numbers so well.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I give a lot of talks to like dental students as well. And so sometimes, I have to really, they grill me pretty hard sometimes because you got some of those kids that are looking to buy a practice and they're like, well, I got this P&L from this practice owner that wants to bring me in. I say, well, I wouldn't do that. Like not if their facility costs are that high or their supplies. I mean, you can change a lot of things when you buy a practice, but there's certain things you can't.
And one thing you definitely don't want to change when you buy a practice is getting rid of the team. Because sometimes you can drop the cost of the team by eliminating one or two team members, but that's going to cause a war in the practice, and they're the ones that are going to support you. So if you're buying a practice, that's something you can change.
Yeah, it's at least not quickly.
No, right.
That's one of the practices I bought. The retiring owner brought everyone in for a Christmas party. It was like December 1st. And he said, all right, everyone, I just sold the practice. Your new owner will be here in 20 minutes. Merry Christmas. And so I show up and everyone's in tears. And it was like the first time he had a Christmas party in the 25 years he'd been practicing because he didn't really believe in parties. And so I show up and it was a shocking day to say the least. So yeah, if you're going to do that, hopefully the team is acceptable to you being the new owner as well.
That's always a difficult thing when you buy a practice. So I went through that. Yeah. And then I went through that when I sold a practice in 21. So I certainly understand that. So I like to do for a couple of minutes, I like to do a different section. It's called Pod Decks. It's a bunch of cards on an app. And they're all based on this section is all based on business. So there are a deck of cards here. So I'm going to go through these questions. The point of this, Addison, is to go ahead and answer them very quickly. You don't have to go into long drawn out answers. Okay. Hopefully we can get through like 8 or 10 of them. So first question, what have you learned from the most successful person you know?
Find things you're passionate about. This is from a guy who sold $1.2 billion business.
Well, I love that too. We already talked about that before we recorded. So what business related book has inspired you the most, or what is your favorite book?
The Secret by Og Mandino.
I'll have to check that out. Next question. Who is the one person you'd love to have as a mentor?
Tim Cook.
Apple guy. When do you plan on retiring?
Never.
I tell people I'm retired from dentistry, but I'm not retired from life. I'm busier now than ever before. So yeah. I agree with that. Okay.
Yeah.
What is one skill or trait you feel is imperative for a dentist to be successful?
Self-awareness and like the ability to read people and read yourself and how to interact.
What are 3 adjectives that describe your strengths?
Calculated, innovative, and creative.
Okay. All right. How did you develop key partnerships throughout your career?
Dumb luck.
Okay. All right. Nothing wrong with that. If you achieved all of your life goals tomorrow, what would you do next?
Part of me says I wouldn't do anything different. And the other part of me is I think I'd love to be the mowing guy on a golf course because, we're dentists. We like straight lines. We like perfect little things. So to be outside, to be on a lawnmower, like listening to an audiobook, and to be anal as all hell with all the grass blades, it'd be great.
I think that's cool. It is an interesting question. What profession do you think is one of the most undervalued today?
Oh, probably medical doctors. I don't think, like the family medical doctor does not get paid enough for all the junk they have to deal with.
Okay. Who has been your greatest inspiration?
Probably my dad. So he was a 40-year employee, but worked his butt off and always like knew how to keep the peace. He worked in the city office under many different mayors and yeah.
Okay. What is one subscription you can't live without?
Probably my Netflix. Yeah. Just my nightly shows to like zone out and fall asleep.
Okay. All right. Last question. What has been your most satisfying moment in business?
Satisfying moment is when I get a message back from a reader who's read my books and it said, oh, it helped me save $100,000 or it helped me avoid a bad practice. I get those, fairly often, and that just makes my month. It's just awesome.
Yeah. Similar to me when I give seminars and people come up to me at the end of the day, they're like 65 years old and they say, you reinvigorated me to want to practice again. So it's a very similar thing. So I understand that concept very well. So Addison, how can people get a copy of your book or books? Talk about that.
All my books are for sale on Amazon. So if you can overnight them pretty much. So if you search Addison Killeen on Amazon, it's got the manual series of the 6 books there, and then the By the Numbers one as well. So yeah, you can buy those all super quick, or just check out more of my resources at AddisonKilleen.com. And that's where they can connect with me and shoot me an email. It goes right to my email.
And then if people want more interest on DSN, how do they get more information on DSN?
Yeah, so if you're interested in checking out dentalsuccessnetwork.com, just fully spelled out, just like that. And they can learn more about it there. It's it's hard to understand until you get in it. So sometimes hopping in it and just seeing what it's all about and how much you can save is pretty huge.
As you know, I'm a vendor. I attend a lot of events and I hear such great things about your event, the DSN event every year. So kudos to you guys because I've never been there, but I've known a ton about it. So
it's just positive sharing. And when you get just like any dental seminar that's maybe not associated with like a big association, when people are actually want to be there and are there for the content and the other people there, it's really fun.
That's what I've heard. So kudos to you guys. You've done a great job with that. So Addison, thank you so much for joining me today. I had a great time talking to you and again, meeting you for the first time. So thank you for allowing me to do that. If you liked what Addison had to say, you want to pick up a copy of his books, check out his Amazon store that they have. You can search his website as well, AddisonKilleen.com. And this is Dr. Len Tao talking with Addison Killeen. Thank you so much for joining me today. And as I always end my episodes, remember, your reputation matters. Until the next episode, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll talk to everyone soon.